The wonderful secret of meditation practice, facing the wandering mind. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. At some point, every meditator encounters the wandering mind during meditation, and counteracting techniques become crucial at this moment. A few skillful, flexible actions can help you return to your main focus immediately, rather than struggling against conflicting impulse. Concentration and mindfulness should support and complement each other. If one weakens, the other is immediately affected. Bad days are often marked by poor concentration, with your mind drifting aimlessly. Therefore, you need methods to restore your focus, even in challenging psychological conditions. Fortunately, you have them. In fact, you can choose from a range of traditional experiences. Technique 1. Estimating time. This method was mentioned in a previous chapter. Distractions pull you away from your breath, and suddenly you realize you are daydreaming. A trick to break free from what is binding you and bring your full attention back to the breath is to estimate the time you've spent wandering. It doesn't need to be exact, just roughly in minutes. Simply note to yourself, okay, I've been distracted for 2 minutes, or since the dog barked, or since thinking about money. When you first use this method, you might have to mentally note it. Once you are used to it, you won't need to do this anymore. Action will happen silently and quickly. Remember, the purpose of this action is to bring your wandering mind back to the breath. You detach from the thought by setting a monitoring standard for the time lost to distraction. The duration doesn't matter. Once you've broken free from the wandering mind, let it go and return to the breath without getting caught up in estimating. Technique 2. Deep breathing. When your mind is agitated and restless, you can re-establish mindfulness with a few deep and quick breaths. Inhale strongly and release just as strongly. This action increases the sensation around the nostrils, making it easier to anchor. Deliberately create a strong action and impose attention. Concentration can drive development, so keep that in mind, and you might find your attention fully stabilized back on the breath. Technique 3. Counting. Counting the breath as it passes is a long-established method. Some meditation centers teach this technique as their main method. Vipassana meditation uses it as an auxiliary technique, employed to re-establish mindfulness and strengthen concentration. As mentioned in Chapter 5, you can count the breath in various ways. But always remember to keep your attention on the breath. You may notice a difference after using counting. The breath slows down or it becomes very light and thin. This is a physiological sign of concentration becoming firm. At this point, the breath may be so light or so quick and smooth that you cannot distinguish between inhalation and exhalation. They seem to merge. At this stage, you can count both in one breath. Continue counting, but only up to 5, then start again. When counting becomes inconvenient, drop the counting and just conceptualize the breathing process, merging into the pure sensation of the breath. Inhalation merges with exhalation, one breath blending into the next as an endless, pure, and flowing process. Technique 4. Mentally repeating in-out. This technique replaces counting with a similar function. Simply direct your attention to the breath and mentally label each cycle with inhale, exhale, or in-out. Continue until you no longer need it, then stop. Technique 5. Neutralizing a thought with another thought. Some thoughts linger persistently because humans are prone to obsessions, making this one of the major issues to address. We tend to cling to things like sexual fantasies, anxiety, and ambitions. We nurture these obsessive fears over the years, giving them many opportunities to exercise by playing with them whenever we are idle. Then, when we sit down to meditate, we ask them to leave so we can have peace, only to be surprised when they coldly refuse. Persistent thoughts like these require a direct method, full frontal assault of appropriate magnitude. Buddhist psychology has developed into a distinct system. Instead of categorizing thoughts as good or bad, Buddhist thinkers prefer to evaluate them as skillful versus unskillful. An unskillful thought is associated with greed, anger, or delusion. These thoughts make the mind susceptible to obsession. They are unskillful in that they lead us further away from the goal of liberation. Skillful thoughts, on the other hand, relate to generosity, compassion, and wisdom. Skillful in the sense that they can be used to counter unskillful thoughts, helping us progress toward liberation. you cannot manufacture liberation. It is not a state built by thought. Nor can you create personal qualities that cause liberation to arise. Charitable thought can create an outward appearance of kindness, but it is not genuine. It will collapse under the pressures of life. Thoughts of compassion may produce only superficial pity. Therefore, the true essence of skillful thoughts will not help us escape the conceptual trap. They are truly skillful only when used as antidotes to the poison of unskillful thoughts. A thought of generosity can temporarily neutralize greed, keeping it under the rug long enough for mindfulness to do its work. Once mindfulness penetrates the roots of the ego, greed is shattered and true generosity can arise. This principle can be applied to your daily practice. If some obsession is bothering you, you can neutralize it by using an opposing thought. For example, if you hate Charlie and cannot shake his scowling face from your mind, try directing loving kindness and friendliness toward Charlie. You may immediately dispel the image, allowing you to continue your practice. Sometimes, however, this single trick does not produce effective results because the obsession is too powerful. In such cases, you must weaken it before regaining balance. This is where guilt, one of humanity's most vulnerable points, can be useful. Take a good look at the psychological reaction you want to rid yourself of, and carefully consider how it makes you feel. What impact does it have on your life, happiness, health, and relationships? Try to see how it affects you when you meet others. See how it hinders your progress on the path toward liberation. In the Pali scriptures, ancient teachings encourage you to neutralize unskillful thoughts with all your might, advising you to work with feelings of disgust and shame, much like being exiled on a journey while wearing an animal bone necklace around your neck. Genuine disgust is what you are pursuing. This step alone may resolve the issue entirely. If it still doesn't work, then adjust the remaining part once more by using a thought opposite to that feeling. Thoughts of greed encompass everything related to desire, from craving coarse objects to subtle ones like wanting to be a virtuous person. Thoughts of anger range from easily becoming irritated with minor things to intense fury. Delusion includes everything from vagueness to hallucinations. Generosity counteracts greed. Charity and compassion counteract anger. You can find the appropriate antidote for any thought causing a problem if you think about it for a moment. Technique 6. Remembering your goal. Sometimes things jump into your mind, sometimes you catch them, sometimes you don't. Words, phrases, or stories spring from the subconscious without apparent cause. Many objects appear, images flash in and out. These experiences are indeed frustrating. Your mind is like a flag being whipped by strong winds. It rises and falls like waves in the ocean. At this point, you simply need to remember why you are sitting here. You can tell yourself, I'm not sitting here to waste my time with these thoughts. I'm sitting here to focus my mind on the breath, common process that happens to all being. Sometimes your mind will calm down immediately as you remind yourself. Other times, you must repeat it several times before your focus returns to the breath. This method can be used alone or in combination with other techniques. When used correctly, these techniques will form an effective arsenal for your battle with the wandering mind. And so you meditate smoothly. Your body is entirely still, and your mind is very quiet. You glide gently with the flow of the breath, in, out, serene, calm, and focused. Everything is perfect. But then suddenly, something utterly foreign jumps into your mind. I sure would like to eat an ice cream cone. Clearly, this is a wandering thought. It's something you shouldn't be thinking about at this moment. You know that. So you pull your mind back to the breath, calmly flowing in, out. And then, have I paid the gas bill this month? Another wandering thought. You recognize it immediately and return to the breath. In, out, in, out. The new sci-fi movie just came out. Maybe I'll see it on Tuesday. No, Tuesday won't work. Wednesday is too busy. Thursday would be better. Another wandering thought. You recognize it immediately and return to the breath, but this time, before you settle back into the breath, this back pain is killing me. And it continues, from one wandering thought to the next, seemingly endless. It's truly troublesome. But this is what makes meditation practice necessary. This distraction is the issue at hand. The main point is to learn how to deal with them. Learn how to recognize them without getting drawn in. This is what we are here to learn. The wandering mind is indeed unpleasant, for sure, but the mind naturally has a range of activities. Don't think of distraction as the enemy. It's simply a basic fact. You want to change something, first thing you have to do is see it as it is. Before you sit down to focus on the breath, your mind is indeed very busy. Jumps around like a wild horse. It changes direction, bunches up its four hooves, and spins around like a dog chasing its tail. Chatters, thinks, imagines, daydreams. Don't get frustrated about this, it's perfectly natural. When your mind wanders away from the meditation object, just observe the distraction with mindfulness. When we talk about the wandering mind in Vipassana meditation, we mean the state of distraction that pulls attention away from the breath. This leads to a new rule in practice. Whenever a mental state arises strong enough to pull the mind away from the object, shift your attention to this state immediately. Temporarily treat this distraction as an object to observe. Remember, this is only temporary. This point is crucial. We don't advise switching horses in midstream, and we don't expect you to pick a new object every 3 minutes. Breath is always the main object. You only shift your attention to the distraction long enough to note its characteristics. What is it? How strong is it? How long does it last? Once you know, not think enough about it, the process of examining the distraction is complete and you return to the breath. Please remember, knowing. These questions are not an invitation to an internal dialogue. It could lead you astray into a state of thinking. We want you to move away from the process of thinking, back to the immediate, wordless, concept-free experience, the breath. These questions are meant to help you break free from the distraction and give you insight into its nature, not to deeply study and get stuck in it. They adjust you to the wandering mind and help you let go of it, all in one step. The issue is this. When a distraction or any other mental state arises in the mind, it originates in the subconscious. Only a moment later does it appear in consciousness. The slight difference in time is crucial, as that little bit of time is enough for clinging to occur. Clinging forms almost instantly and right at the unconscious level. In this way, by the time clinging becomes conscious, we are already attached to it. It is very natural for us to continue this process, becoming even more attached to the distraction as we follow it. By this point, we are certainly thinking rather than simply observing the wandering mind with pure attention. The entire process completes in a moment. This shows us a problem. By the time we become aware of the wandering mind, we are already attached to it. There are 3 steps to treating this condition. To answer these questions, we must determine the nature of the distraction. To do this, we must 1. Detach ourselves from it, 2. Step back mentally, release it, and 3. Look at it objectively. We must stop thinking or feeling to observe the object being examined. This process is an application of mindfulness, a non-attached awareness used to detach from the wandering mind. The bonds of the wandering mind are severed, and mindfulness returns. At this point, mindfulness gently brings concentration back to the breath. When first practicing this method, you may need to use language, mentally narrating. You ask and answer yourself. Soon you will coordinate the methods together. Once familiar, you simply note the wandering mind, quality, and then return to the breath. This process is not conceptual and is completed very quickly. Wandering mind can be anything. A sound, a sensation, an emotion, an imagination, anything. No matter what it is, don't try to suppress it, don't push it out of the mind. That is unnecessary. Just observe it in mindfulness with simple attention. Observe the wandering mind in silence, and it will leave on its own. You will find your attention returning to the breath easily. Do not condemn yourself for being distracted. The wandering mind is natural, comes and goes. Even though this advice may seem wise, you will likely find yourself self-condemning at some point. That too is natural. Just observe the entire process of self-condemnation as another distraction, then return to the breath. Observe the sequence of events. Breathe. Breathe. The wandering mind arises, frustration over the arising of the wandering mind. Self-reproach for letting the mind wander. Recognize the self-condemnation. Return to the breath. Breathe. Breathe. It's a very natural, smooth cycle if you do it correctly. The main point, of course, is patience. If you can learn to observe the wandering mind without interfering with it, everything becomes very easy. You simply glance at the wandering mind and return to the breath immediately. Of course, this same wandering mind may return in the next moment. If it does, just observe it mindfully. If this issue arises in a certain order and pattern, it may take a long time to break the accumulated memory block, perhaps years. Do not be discouraged. This condition is very natural and common. Just observe the distraction and then return to the breath. Don't fight with these wandering thoughts. Also, don't tense up or struggle uselessly. The energy used in resistance will be absorbed by the thought process, making it stronger. So don't try to push these thoughts out of your mind. This is a losing battle for you. Just observe the wandering mind in mindfulness, and it will leave immediately. Strangely enough, the more simple attention you give to such disturbances, quicker they fade. Observe them long enough, often enough, with simple attention, and they will vanish permanently. Fighting them only strengthens them. Looking at them with indifference makes them wither. Mindfulness has the power to dismantle the wandering mind, like an expert diffusing a bomb. A weak wandering mind may only need a moment. Shine the light of awareness on it, and these wandering thoughts will instantly dissipate like smoke and never return. Deeply ingrained habits require continuous mindfulness, and the application of it over a long period break their chains within us. Wandering thoughts are really just paper tigers. They have no self-sustaining power. If not continuously fueled, they will die. If you refuse to feed them with your fear, anger, and greed, they will disappear. Mindfulness is the most important aspect of meditation. It is the essential thing you strive to cultivate. Therefore, it is not necessary to struggle with the wandering mind. The essential thing is to be mindful of what is happening, not to control it. Remember, concentration is just a tool. It ranks second after simple attention. From the perspective of mindfulness, there is no such thing as a wandering mind. Whatever arises in the mind is considered an opportunity to cultivate mindfulness. Remember that the breath is the arbitrary focus point used as the main object of attention. The wandering mind is used as a secondary object. It is essentially no different from the breath. The only slight difference is which one is currently the object of mindfulness at that moment. You can focus on the breath or on the distracted mind. You can focus on the state of calm in the mind, the steadiness of concentration, or the concentration like a fabric that your mind is dragging its feet over. All of these are mindfulness. As long as mindfulness is maintained, concentration will naturally follow. The purpose of meditation is not to focus on the breath without interruption forever. If it were, then the purpose would be completely useless. The purpose of meditation is also not to achieve a state of complete calm and peace in the mind. Although it is a wonderful state, it does not lead to liberation. The purpose of meditation is to attain continuous mindfulness. Mindfulness, and only mindfulness, gives rise to enlightenment. Wandering thoughts appear in countless forms. Buddhist philosophy categorizes them into many types. One of these types is obstacles. All of them are called obstacles because they hinder the development of both parts of meditation, mindfulness, and concentration. Be careful with this term. The word obstacle has a negative connotation, suggesting that these mental states are something we want to eliminate. But that doesn't mean they need to be suppressed, avoided, or condemned. Take greed, for example. We wish to avoid the state of greed as long as possible, as prolonged greed leads to enslavement and sorrow. That doesn't mean we try to discard the thought from our mind whenever it arises. We simply do not agree to do anything to help it stay longer, but let it come and go on its own. When greed is first observed with simple attention, no judgment is formed. We simply step back and watch it arise. The entire transformation of greed is observed in this way from beginning to end. We do not help, block, or hinder it in any way. It can stay as long as it likes, and we learn all about its nature while it lingers. We observe what greed does, how it creates difficulties for us, and how it burdens others. We recognize how it persistently frustrates us, and how we forever live in unfulfilled longing. From this first-hand experience, we deeply understand that greed is an unskillful way of living. This understanding is not just a theoretical concept. All obstacles are dealt with in a similar manner, and we will consider them one by one. Craving. Suppose you are distracted by some experience during practice. It could be a pleasant fantasy or a sense of pride. It might be a feeling of self-esteem, or it could be a love or happiness arising from the physical sensations of the meditation experience. Whatever it is followed by a state of craving, desire to attain what you are thinking about, or the desire to prolong the experience you are having. No matter what its nature is, you should deal with craving in this way. Recognize the thought or feeling as it arises. Recognize the state of craving that follows as a separate object. Clearly recognize the intensity of the craving. Then recognize how long it lasts until it finally fades away. When you have completed all these steps, bring your attention back to the breath. Aversion. Suppose you are distracted by a negative experience. Could be something that makes you continuously anxious or fearful, or it might be a feeling of guilt, sorrow, pain. Whatever the nature of the thought or feeling, you feel rejected or suppressed. Try not to resist or deny it. The method of dealing with aversion is similar. Observe the arising of the thought or feeling. Note the state of rejection that follows. Estimate the level and extent of the rejection. Observe how long it lasts until it fades away. Then bring your attention back to the breath. Lethargy. Lethargy appears in many forms, with varying degrees, intensity, and ranges from slight drowsiness to deep sluggishness. We are talking about the state of mind, not the body. Physical sleepiness or exhaustion is different. In Buddhist psychology, it is categorized as a physiological sensation. Psychological lethargy is closely related to aversion, as it is a more cunning tendency of the mind to avoid facing discomfort. Lethargy is a state that blocks the active parts of the mind, dulling the senses and blunting intellectual sharpness. It is a forced drowsiness pretending to be sleepiness. This is a very difficult condition to deal with because its presence directly opposes the work of mindfulness. Lethargy is almost the opposite of mindfulness. However, mindfulness can also treat this obstacle, and it is done using the same general method. Remember, when the state of lethargy arises, note its intensity and level. When it arises, how long it stays, and when it disappears. Another special point here is that it is most important to catch this phenomenon early. You must recognize it as soon as it forms and immediately apply the appropriate level of attention. If you allow it to arise, it may quickly grow and overpower the strength of mindfulness that you have. When lethargy takes over, the mind will be dulled and paralyzed for the entire session, and it may carry over into subsequent sessions. Restlessness. The state of restlessness and anxiety is a manifestation of the mind's agitation. Your mind keeps jumping around, refusing to stay with any object. You may encounter this problem many times. Sometimes, even a sense of unease predominates. The mind refuses to settle anywhere, continuously jumps. The basic method is still the best remedy for this situation. Restlessness occupies a part of the consciousness. You can call it an attribute or a component if you like. Whatever you call it, that feeling of agitation is present with a definable characteristic. Find it. Once you have identified it, note how long it lasts, when it arises, how long it stays, and watch it leave. Then bring your attention back to the breath. Doubt. Doubt has a distinct feeling in the mind. The Pali texts describe it elegantly as the feeling of a person struggling through a desert, stopping at a crossroads with no signposts. Which road will he choose? He has no clue, so he just stands there, hesitating. Common internal dialogue during meditation might go like this. Why am I sitting like this? Am I really getting anything out of this? Of course I am. This will be good for me, the book said so. No, this is clearly crazy. This is just wasting time. No, I can't give up. I said I would practice, so I will. Or maybe I'm just being stubborn. I don't know anymore. I really don't know. Don't fall into this trap. It's just an obstacle, a fog that clouds your mind, so you don't continue doing the most terrifying thing in the world, truly becoming aware of what is happening. To deal with doubt, simply pay attention to this wavering state of mind as an object of observation. Don't get caught up in it. Step back and watch it. See how strong it is when it arises, how long it stays, and it will leave, allowing you to return to the breath. This is the general pattern you will use for any wandering mind that arises. The wandering mind is a general term for any mental state that arises to hinder your practice. Some are very subtle. Negative states are easy to recognize, such as lack of confidence, fear, anger, sadness, discomfort, and depression. Craving and greed are a bit harder to identify because they disguise themselves under labels that we often consider virtuous or holy. You may experience the desire to perfect yourself, or you may feel the urge to gain a higher foundation of virtue. Even attachment to the happiness of meditation, jhana, can occur. But the most difficult thing is how to separate yourself from the feeling of altruism. After all, it is a subtle form of greed, the desire for satisfaction, and this is a clever way to avoid the truth of the present moment. More devious than all is the overly self-assured mind that sneaks into your practice. Contentment, peace, inner satisfaction, empathy, and compassion for all beings are states of mind so soothing and generous that you can open yourself up to them and cling to them without hindrance. Otherwise, you feel like a traitor to humanity because you lack conscience and compassion. In truth, there is no need to feel that way. We are not advising you to abandon these states of mind to become a machine. We only hope you see them as they are. They are just mental states, arising and passing away. As you continue your practice, these states will arise more often. Fundamental thing is to never become attached to them. Just watch each mental state as it arises. See what it is, how strong it is, how long it lasts, and watch it drift away. It's all just a movie playing across the sky of your mind. The mental states are no different from the breath. Every breath has a beginning, middle, and end. Every mental state arises, develops, and then fades away. You should try to see these stages clearly, but this is not easy. As we've noted, every thought or feeling begins in the unconscious part of the mind, and only later appears in consciousness. We often pay attention to these only after they have arisen in the field of awareness and lingered there for a while. In fact, we often become aware of the wandering mind only when it is about to release us and leave. That moment, we are startled as if struck by a sudden blow, with the sudden realization that we have been lost, daydreaming, or imagining for quite some time. Obviously, by then, it is too late in the whole process. We might call this phenomenon catching the lion's tail, and it is a clumsy effort. Like facing a fierce beast, we must come directly to terms with the mental state. Patiently, we will learn to recognize them as they are arising, growing, and deepening into our consciousness. Since mental states arise from the unconscious, to catch their arising, you must extend awareness down to the unconscious level. This is challenging because you cannot see what happens there, at least not in the same way you usually perceive intellectual thoughts. But you can learn to recognize the movement of vague awareness and sense it with a kind of psychological sensory ability. This comes with practice, and this ability is one of the effects of deep, quiet concentration. Concentration slows down the arising of mental states, giving you enough time to sense each one emerging from the unconscious before you see it in consciousness. Deep concentration helps you extend awareness into the dark, seething space where thoughts and feelings arise. When concentration is deep enough, you gain the ability to see thoughts and feelings arise slowly, like distinct bubbles, each separate with gaps between them. They bubble up slowly from the unconscious, linger in awareness for a while, and then drift away. Applying mindfulness to mental states is a clear process. This is especially true for sensations or sensory abilities. Sensory ability can easily get carried away, meaning it can easily embellish what is actually present, and it can also easily overlook details about the object and miss things. The standard here is to try to experience each mental state fully as it is, without adding or subtracting anything. Take the pain in your leg as an example. There clearly is a pure sensation that continuously changes, with no two moments being the same. It moves from one place to another. The intensity rises and falls continuously. Pain is not an entity but a phenomenon. There is no concept pinned to it or supporting it. Pure unbroken attention to this phenomenon will simply experience it as a continuous flow of energy, nothing more. There is no thought or resistance, just the energy flow. In the early stages of meditation practice, we need to reconsider the underlying assumptions given by concepts. Most of us have an intellectual background from school and life that allows us to manipulate mental phenomena, conceptualizing in a reasonable way. Our careers, what we consider success in daily life, and happy relationships are all viewed through that conceptual lens. But in the process of developing mindfulness, we temporarily set aside the conceptualization process and focus on the essence of the mental phenomenon. In meditation practice, we seek to experience the mind before it is conceptualized. But the human mind conceptualizes such things and labels them as pain. You find yourself thinking of it as pain. That is a concept. It is just a label attached to the essence of that sensation. Then you see yourself building a mental image, a picture of the pain, seeing it as a shape. You may even create a diagram of the leg with the pain depicted in vivid colors. This is indeed creative and fascinating, but it is not what we want. These concepts are brought into the reality of life. You are likely to find yourself thinking, I have a pain in my leg. I is a concept. It is an added surplus attached to that pure experience. When you bring the I into the process, you create a conceptual gap between the reality and the awareness observing that reality. Thoughts like I, mine, or what's mine have no place in direct intuitive attention. They are merely secondary with very limited value. Bringing the I into the present situation means you define the pain and add unrelated things to it. If you remove I from the situation, the pain is no longer painful. It is just a pure, ever-changing energy flow, perhaps even beautiful. If you see the I hidden in the experience of pain or any sensation, simply observe it mindfully. Look at those painful, deeply personal phenomena with pure attention alone. But the general idea is very simple. You genuinely want to see each sensation, whether it is pain, happiness, or boredom. You want to experience the phenomenon fully in its pure, natural form. There's only one way to do this. Timing must be exact. Your awareness of each sensation must be precisely coordinated with its arising. If you are just a moment late and miss the beginning, you won't capture the entire process. If you cling to any sensation for even a moment, it becomes the past, and you only deal with memory, missing the arising of the next sensation. This is a delicate process. You must continually monitor the present moment, picking up and dropping events without any delay or hesitation. It requires sensory acuity. The relationship with the sensation cannot fall into the past or future, but must remain purely in the present, the immediate moment. The human mind always seeks conceptual phenomena and has been trained in that direction over time. Every small sensation will burst forth, triggering a conceptual thought in the direction the mind is operating. Take the process of hearing as an example. You are sitting in meditation and someone in the next room drops a plate. The sound strikes your ear. Immediately, you see the entire scene of that room, and perhaps you even see the person who dropped the plate. If this is a familiar place, like your home, you might even have a three-dimensional, full-color film running in your mind of who dropped it and which plate was broken. The whole process occurs in the mind rapidly, jumps out of the unconscious, bright and clear, pushing all other awareness out of the present. Where is the initial sensation, pure experience of hearing? It's lost in the confusion, completely overwhelmed and forgotten. We lose the present and have already entered the world of imagination. Another example. You are sitting in meditation and a sound strikes your eardrum. Just a vague, indistinct noise. Could be anything. What could happen is this. What was that? Who did that? Where did it come from? Is it far from here? Is it dangerous? And so on. You go further without any answers. Just your imagined guesses. Conceptualization is a clever, latent process. It sneaks into the experience and takes control. When you hear a sound during meditation, just direct pure attention to the experience of hearing alone, nothing else. What actually happens is very simple, and we may not need to think about it at all. Sound waves strike the ear in a unique, distinct form, are transformed into impulses within the brain, and are transmitted to consciousness as a type of sound. That's all. There are no images, mental memories, concepts, or internal dialogues, just noise. The truth is simple and arrives gracefully without embellishment. When you hear a sound, just be mindful of the process of hearing. The rest is just unnecessary chatter, which should be discarded. The same method can be applied to every sensation, emotion, or experience you have. Look carefully at your own experience. Dig deep and penetrate through the old layers of the mind to see what's really there. You'll be surprised at how simple and beautiful it is. And there are also times when many sensations arise at once. You might have a fearful thought, a tightening in your stomach, pain in your back, and itching in your left ear all at once. Don't sit there feeling confused. Don't worry about which sensation to observe. Pick the most obvious one. Simply open yourself up to welcome these phenomena as they invade and demand your attention. Give it enough attention to see it fade away, then return to the breath. If another phenomenon comes, treat it the same way. But this process can take a long time. Don't just sit there searching for events to be mindful of. Keep your mindfulness on the breath until other events come to pull your attention away. When you feel that happening, don't resist. Let your attention naturally flow to the wandering mind and observe it until it dissolves. Then return to the breath. Don't seek mental or physical phenomena. Just stay with the breath. Let them come to you. Of course, there will be times when your mind drifts. Even after a long time of practice, you may suddenly realize that you've been lost for a long time. Don't get discouraged. Realize how long you've been drifting, then return to the breath. There's no need for a negative reaction. Simply recognizing the wandering mind is already a positive act of awareness. That is, in itself, practice of pure mindfulness. Mindfulness grows through practice. It's similar to a muscle in the body. Each time you exercise it, you give it energy, making it a little stronger. In fact, you'll feel that awakening awareness means you are improving your mindfulness. That means there's progress. Return to the breath without any regret. But regret is just a natural, conditioned response, and it may come along with a mental state. It's one of the psychological habits. If you find yourself feeling disappointed, discouraged, or self-critical, just observe that phenomenon with simple attention. It's just the wandering mind. Give it a little attention and watch it fade away, then return to the breath. The rule we just discussed can and should be applied thoroughly to all mental states. You'll find that these are official, strict rules, completely practical and effective. This is one of the hardest things you've ever undertaken. You'll find yourself willing to apply this method to some areas of experience while reluctantly using it in others. Meditation is like a psychological solvent. It gradually dissolves anything you put into it. Human life is strange. We enjoy taking in poison and stubbornly continue to consume it, even though it is killing us. The thoughts we cling to are the poison. You'll see that you are eager to uproot certain thoughts while jealously guarding and cherishing others. That is the conditioning of human nature. Vipassana meditation is not a game. Clear awareness is far more valuable than mere entertainment. This is the path out of the swamp, a swamp created by your own cravings and aversions, in which we are stuck. It's actually not that hard to apply awareness to the negative areas of life. Once you see fear or frustration dissolve in the intense heat of awareness, you'll be eager to repeat the process. These unpleasant mental states cause pain, so you want to stay away from them. It's equally beneficial to apply this process to positive mental states, such as love, patriotism, parental love, or romantic love when necessary. Positive attachments will hold you in the swamp just as much as negative clinging. You can rise above the surface just enough to breathe more easily if you practice Vipassana diligently. Vipassana is the path to nirvana. From the recorded teachings of those who have walked the path to noble attainment, it's worth every effort and practice.